Hello, hello, Adam Chronister. Thank you so much for talking with me today. Adam is a legend in the agency space. He has a great agency called Enleaf. They do really good work from what I can see. He's spoken at prestigious events like Mad Singer's SEO Mastery Summit. And as far as I can tell, he does really good SEO work. I'm very excited to with him. And we're going to really go through the importance of SEO reporting. If you're doing client work or if you are a client, your agency needs to be doing some good reporting and let you know about what's happening in the campaign, all the way from the beginning, where, as we know, SEO takes a while. So the first 3 to 6 months, you definitely need to let them know, how are impressions doing? How are new keywords that are getting indexed? All of that stuff. So Adam actually shared and showed me his reporting on Looker Studios, which is amazing, and I absolutely love it. So we're having him on the podcast or YouTube thing, whatever we really are, and picking his brain on reporting, SOPs, SEO processes, and sort of where he sees all of this going in 2024. So thank you for jumping on, Adam. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Yeah. It's a pleasure to chat once again. I know we had a chat last week a little bit about reporting, and glad you had an opportunity to kind of see what we're doing on the reporting side, and just excited to kind of dive into it, talk a little bit about reporting and whatever else comes up. So
Adam, to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into SEO. You obviously are very experienced, looking at your reporting and what you do for clients. And I mean, you posted recently about your AI processes. Obviously, you're very experienced in search marketing. So how did you get your foot in the door? How did you end up to being Enleaf?
Yeah, so I started around 2009 is kind of where I got my foot in the door. My background originally is in website design and development, computer science. So I have a applied sciences degree in computer science, but I got about 3/4 of the way through my degree, and kind of realized I didn't want to, be a coder, but I loved everything about that industry. And around that time, I got an opportunity as a project manager for a startup software company. They didn't actually have any kind of marketing at the time, and I was kind of dabbling around with Twitter, which was at that time fairly new. I said, hey, we're not doing marketing. Do you care if I dabble around with this? And if you've ever worked at a startup, if you raise your hand and volunteer, usually the people are like, yeah, go have fun. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door, and things just kind of evolved ever since then.
Yeah. And how was that first campaign? Did you end up doing SEO?
Actually, at that point, I was doing more social media marketing, but then slowly started to pivot more into more of the data science type stuff, right? And so as an agency, we, outside of ourselves, we don't do a lot of social media marketing just yet. We're more on the data science search marketing side. But that experience definitely got my foot in the door and kind of whet my appetite for digital marketing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then when did you kind of get into SEO and the search marketing side?
I mean, honestly, it was around the same time. So I remember going to college and there was a guest lecturer here in town that actually owned essentially a hardware, not like a lumber hardware store, but a store that had hardware for cabinetry, like knobs and all this stuff, right? And he came in and did a guest lecture on SEO. And this is back in the time where nobody did SEO as an agency. He was just, essentially talking about how he was able to leverage this, relatively new practice of SEO into his industry. And that definitely spurred my interest. I'm like, wow, you can actually impact how a website shows up online, right? And so that was kind of one of my first aha moments. And that's when I really started to also kind of look at that along with, my agency experience all kind of accumulated into that, right? Also the agency experience, we built a lot of websites and mobile applications at the time. but that particular agency did no marketing for their clients. And so I saw this big hole as well. I'm like, hey, you have clients that are building websites and mobile applications, but then what? Then they're kind of like left on their own to like drive people to them. So it was also that experience that kind of gave me the aha moment that, hey, this digital marketing stuff is kind of important, right? Like it's great to like spend money on an idea, but if you can't get anyone to it, it's somewhat worthless, right? So
yeah, exactly. And so you were an agency doing web design, doing some mobile development, and then you had this aha moment about SEO and sort of the power of SEO.
well, that actually the agency I was talking about was not, that was one I worked for prior to starting out on my own. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where I kind of got my foot wet in digital marketing, started doing some on my own, and then eventually went out on my own, started Enleaf, and now we have our, a team that's dedicated to website design and development and search marketing. So SEO and Google advertising, all of those types of, cool activities.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it is so cool. So do you, what was the evolution of the agency? So you get off, I'm assuming you go independent. Do you start off as like a freelancer, or do you go straight into trying to build an agency? How did that evolution happen?
Yeah, so I started the agency honestly as a side hustle, right? And it got to the point, like the last actual job I had, it was a director of digital marketing job for a company in the travel hospitality space. And while I was doing that job, I was running the agency on the side, poorly at that because I had a full-time gig. But I was making more money on the agency with only a handful of clients than I was at my day job. And I was kind of getting burnt out, right? Juggling. And so, I had a long conversation with my wife. I'm like, hey, I kind of forced her hand. I said, hey, I either need to sell this agency or I need to quit my job. Well, obviously she's going to choose the agency because it was making more income. So she's like, we basically come up with a plan. It's like, hey, save up a year worth of equivalent salary to give yourself, padding, and then let's ditch the job and see where it goes from there. Right. Basically giving myself a year runway. And yeah, I've never had to like dip into that fund. Right. Sometimes I pulled out of it and then reallocate it. But yeah, it's been a really great choice. I wish I would have done it a long time ago, or prior to when I did. But I'm also glad I did it that way too. Like I didn't do what a lot of people do, where they just like, they burn all the boats, which sometimes is a good idea. But then if they don't get off the ground too fast, then they go right back to the golden handcuffs. And so I kind of had the best of both worlds. I was able to warm myself up to like going full time. To where we are today, where now I have a full set of staff that help run the agency day to day. So
yeah, and so that's so interesting. And when you first started hiring and building out the infrastructure of the agency, like I'd love to do a deep dive in. We're going to talk about SEO reporting, but also the SEO process and how to build a team around SEO. And get them to do these SOPs, et cetera. Making sure that, I think that you've done a really good job at creating a lot of efficiencies in your agencies, it sounds like. And so I'd love to see how that sort of evolution of, hiring people. And then at first it might be a little bit all over the place. You're kind of just like, hey, do this, do that, to where you have a full infrastructure with SOPs and you kind of all are on the same page. You can do stuff efficiently.
Yeah, it has been a process, but I mean, it doesn't, I think, first of all, I'm not great at SOPs, right? I'm good at coming up with processes, but actually documenting them like in an orderly fashion is not my specialty. But luckily there are really good tools, right? There's a really cool a tool called Scribe How, which literally it will just record step by step of what you're doing. Also, I think people make creating SOPs too complicated and they get like analysis paralysis. which is what I used to have. Like, I'm like, oh man, I got to document this, and I forgot this stuff. But literally, like, you at the beginning, just record a Loom video. Like, just do it like you would a webinar. Record a Loom video. Like, this is how I do it. And then also, I would have my team shadow me, right? And that way, they're just like, they're learning, like, okay, how does Adam do this? Like, whether it's getting on a call with clients, going over reporting. I still do a lot of our sales outreach, but even a lot of that stuff, I bring people on, for social proof, but they're starting to learn, like, okay, what is the DNA of the business, at least as I envision it. And then the beauty of having a team is you find people that can understand the way that you think, the culture that you want to provide, how you do things, but then start to add their own flair, or even their own, like, skill sets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a lot of team members, but like what I've learned about myself is that I never had any grand notions that I was, like, super organized, right? But I never realized how unorganized I was until I hired an operations director, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody that can actually herd all the cats better than I can, right? Same with content. I've never been great with content, which is why I like the AI, because it's kind of like, it kind of helps me get over the crutch, right? But if you're an SEO, you have to have content, right? So now we have, a team of writers. Well, actually, technically I call them editors and prompt engineers now. But nonetheless, a team that are efficient with content creation, well beyond what I'm able to do. So yeah, a lot of it is one part osmosis through just like getting on a Zoom call, listening in, recording what's happening, and then also using these other pretty simple tools, to document stuff.
So kind of learning over SOPs, just like having it in there, like somebody can learn the process, however that is. And a lot of times it's as simple as a Loom video. I completely agree.
Yeah.
We use Loom a ton in my agency. Like, just sharing Loom videos is the easiest way to transmit knowledge. And then the other one is jumping on calls, and being patient with people and teaching them.
Now we have it to the point where, like, I disseminate, like, content and structure and processes more verbally than anything. Like, hey, just watch me do it, and let's record it and then document it. But now I have my first line that teaches the second line, right? So we have writers that follow our process that I've only had one or two conversations with, right? Mostly hiring conversations. But yet they're, our team is teaching them the processes, and that's the best way, to have them learn the processes. And also, that's the other thing too, is like, as a founder or a director, like, you don't always have to be responsible for the processes, right? Like, sometimes I'll sign our team. I'm like, hey, this is what I want you to learn and figure out, and maybe I'll point them to the right resource. But I want you to create the process, right? And so when I realized that I didn't have to create all the SOPs, that everybody in the business has some responsibility to create and iterate processes, that was pretty eye-opening as well. And sometimes their processes are going to be better than mine, because everybody has insights and perspectives. Luckily, most of our team members are what I would consider fairly entrepreneurial, and it's kind of part of our DNA. Like, we're, like, I think to fit in with Enleaf, you have to have some kind of, like, entrepreneurial spark. You don't have to necessarily run a business, but you have to be curious. You have to be willing to learn, which I think should be a prerequisite for digital marketing in general, right? Because things change so fast. So if you're not willing to learn, maybe not the industry for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So kind of like that, like, do-it-yourself mindset, get things done, learn them. And I think that is really good to have in the digital marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is really powerful. Where did you first sort of start hiring people? Like, where do you find good talent?
All over, really. I would say we initially used to hire people, and sometimes still do this. We would go like to Upwork or even Freelancer, and we would do small projects on there just to test them out. And then we would try to recruit people off of there, right? And there's kind of subtle ways to do that, right? It's technically against the terms of service, but you get a lot of creativity. It's pretty easy to get around those systems, right? You share a Google Doc, and then you can chat inside the Google Doc. We also have some branded stuff inside of our profile. So it's not hard to find out if you end up getting hired by us on Upwork, who we are, right? To bridge that gap.
Right.
But yeah, we would do small test projects on those platforms. We've also hired some Latin American talent through some staffing agencies that focus on, the Latin American market. So those tend to be kind of our main verticals. Usually people will start out, with a one-off project, and some of them will remain that way, and others, like if I see some potential or there's a need, I might try to bring them into the fold. And so that's how we've gotten a few pretty good candidates, right?
Yeah.
There's also some good tips too. Like one of our key team members who handles all of our content, we found him on Upwork, and he's based in the US. He didn't have a lot of projects in his portfolio. It was relatively new, but we were looking for someone that specifically had experience with Surfer SEO, right? And I think out of everyone on there, only probably 10 plus people mentioned that in there, right? And so we did some test projects and eventually brought him in, full time. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And so you mentioned Surfer SEO. You also mentioned, prompt engineering and AI content, etc. Maybe let's just do a little foray, a little dive into that kind of process. Like it sounds like you've really sort of changed everything since the advent of AI in terms of process. So can you go into a little bit more about like how do you generate content? How do you think about all of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like what I mentioned earlier, like it's kind of a joke, but not really. Like I now refer to our writing team as kind of what I joke is I say, hey, we don't have writers, we have prompt engineers and editors, right? So there are still times and occasions in clients where we will write stuff from scratch, but that's becoming more and more less of an experience where a client doesn't have some level of AI in their content. Maybe it's just the ideation or the outline, but ideally, like in order to keep up with everything, we almost have to be using AI. And I think we were pretty early in our adoption. There were a lot of people that were really, really reluctant and kind of scared, like, what is Google going to do? We jumped like head first, right? I would say a couple months before, everyone was like, okay, it's okay now to use AI content. I'm just like, I just have a feeling that this is not going away. So let's just pull the Band-Aid off now and worry about the ramifications later, right? We still get questions, but again, these are becoming less and less. But in the early days, people are like, oh, I heard that you can't use AI content or it's bad. So now we have clients who are like, yeah, we understand that like we have to be using AI content, but what about this or what about that? And we're pretty good at explaining, where the boundaries lie, right?
Right. Where do the boundaries lie? What are the biggest pushback you get?
There's a couple areas. One is like, and this is where the editing comes into play, as well as like having a good structure, right? One of the things that I still see people do is they'll just create stuff right out of, say, ChatGPT, and that's not going to be a very helpful idea. You still need a level of editing, and also you need a process that's going to allow you to put the voice of the client into the content. And there's a number of ways to do that, right? We use some tools as well as have built some tools like there's tools like SEMRush, Agility Writer is one we use, and then we've even built some handcrafted tools off of ChatGPT for Sheets and Docs that allow us to bake in a client persona, right? And so you kind of want to understand the client's voice. So you want to build a custom persona for your client. You also kind of want to understand what their pain points are or what their messaging is, as well as their product or brand. So that's where the editing piece comes into play. But I would say, 70 to 80% of the baseline, be it ideation or outline, can now be created with AI, with that extra layer of, human oversight. Right.
Yeah. And so, do you use Agility Writer for the first draft, and then you'll go in and edit it?
Yeah, in general, we use AI for the first draft, right? So some projects that might be Agility Writer, others it's our own custom-made systems. Just depends on the project and what we're looking to do, right?
Yeah. Because, one of the simplest ways, too, is to just chat back and forth with ChatGPT to create something, but don't ask it to write a full article. Just give it your target audience persona, explain in a single chat everything that you want, and then go, paragraph by paragraph, create an outline, and give it a lot of feedback. So you're essentially editing with ChatGPT. So that's like a really simple way to do it.
Well, and one of the things that we do, like I have a couple content systems that I built, pulling in AI or ChatGPT's API into Google Sheets. And what it allows me to do is what I call prompt stacking, right? So every field can be its own prompt. And so I've been able to even get around a lot of AI detection by having each paragraph have a custom prompt, which makes the content more human-like. So that's where having a third-party platform, be it one you build or one that's already pre-built for you, is typically going to give you a better output and product than just going right to ChatGPT, right? It also expedites the process.
Right. So I have also been playing a lot with the GPT and Sheets stuff. It's very good. Especially I was on the Unofficial Shopify podcast, which is a great one, and we were discussing doing product pages at scale, all that kind of stuff. Where you can really, I like that term too. Prompt stacking is good, but you can really do a lot with when you add AI into a Google Sheet, especially on e-commerce where you have tons of products, tons of little details, and then you can map your keywords to your products and then have it use that cell to create content. You can also give it a cell of the target audience persona. There's so much fun stuff with AI nowadays. I mean, you can generate the target audience persona by using your Google Analytics data, using different data points you have, make it craft a good target audience persona, and then use that additionally in your content. So I like the Google Sheets stuff a lot.
Yeah, we even have a process too that, and a lot of these processes can be adaptive, right? So we had a long form blog post process in Sheets, and it didn't take much to adapt that to create an entire ebook. So now I have a process that will allow us to create a 30,000 word ebook, in a matter of minutes, which then we leverage for lead magnets or branding. So right now I have a published book on Amazon for marketing in the vacation rental / hospitality space. And it, the longest part of that whole process was creating the cover. And even that was pretty simple, using a Canva-like tool, right? So in 30 minutes, to maybe an hour when you're talking about creating the ebook, transferring it to EPUB, creating a title and uploading it to Amazon, 60 minutes tops, you can now become a published author, which also helps on the whole brand awareness thing, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. That's so interesting. And so you mentioned Agility Writer, you mentioned Surfer SEO. Do you have other tools in your tool belt that you prefer? Anywhere from SEO tools all the way to like project management. Like I know we use Slack and Asana, but like what is your overall sort of tool belt?
Yeah, I mean for audits, it's going to be Screaming Frog, SEMRush, and then various Google properties. Google Search Console, Google Analytics. So we have a fairly customized auditing process that is a mishmash of all those tools. Project management. It's funny. We were using ClickUp, and I think it just became a little bit too much for us. So now we're actually have gone back to Trello and giving that a try. So we've had a little challenge finding a project management system that is just the right fit, right? ClickUp was fun for a while, but there almost was too many bells and whistles for our need. Handful of writing tools. Again, I let kind of our writing team determine that. I'm always dabbling with new tools, but I think for me lately, I like building. I've enjoyed building no code tools, right? So I've been starting to build some processes with make.com. I have a number of ones that I've built with integrated, Google Sheets and ChatGPT integrations. So for me, the most fun is making tools, but there's a lot that we use as well.
And a little side note, do you do any of the IFTTT kind of stuff?
I used to. It's been a long time. So yeah, it's been a hot minute since I've done any of that. So if there's any of those tactics that are still viable that people are using, let me know. Because we used to do that a lot and haven't really done a lot of it as of late.
Yeah.
Probably should dip back into it.
But yeah, there's a lot of make.com. I've created an account and I was starting to play with it. But yeah, that sounds like it's really one of the future tools because, it's similar to Zapier, a little bit simpler, cheaper.
Yes.
It can do a lot, right? So.
Yeah, I started building a process that basically I can take a single link and it will transcribe it and convert it to a Facebook post, a Twitter post, a Google My Business post, all of those things. I haven't completed that. That was a weekend project. But my goal with that eventually is to create a system that will feed all of your social media profiles as well as, in my opinion, more importantly, your Google My Business profile, right? So I've been dabbling with a couple different ways, and I think using make.com might be a better way to create essentially an automated Google My Business profile poster,
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I've seen a lot of people do really cool stuff in there. We need to share this stuff too, because I know that there's a lot of reinventing the wheel going on too.
Yeah.
Where people will create internal systems, but then we're all just like making our own, which is understandable.
I've shared some. Like I have a couple. Well, I have one course with IMG Gold, and I have another course. I think it's this course is private to the M3 Mastermind with Digital Marketer, but I have a course on a press release generator that I've created. But I'm going to be giving another version of that same talk next month, or actually in July. So keep an eye for that to come out. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
like I'm pretty good at creating processes. A little bit not as good as monetizing them or publishing them. Some of them I've kept, a little bit to myself. Like the ebook thing. Right now, I'm trying to monetize that. As well as like our reports, but there's other stuff that I'm willing to give away when the right opportunity comes along. So
so everyone definitely follow Adam because he'll have some cool stuff coming out.
I seed out some nuggets here and there. So
you definitely do. Even just on Facebook, I've seen some really cool posts by you, and just seeing what you're doing. And are you also looking at are you expanding out more content stuff? What are your plans?
For myself, I'm always doing something, right? Like the last 13 months have been pretty heavy with a lot of speaking engagements. I'm probably going to slow that down slightly this year. I'm still going to do some talks, but maybe not as many international talks this year. still trying to get some time on podcasts such as this one, and then also have some PR stuff that I'm working on. So my next big thing that I'm focusing on right now is in the realm of PR. There's a talk that I'm kind of putting together right now. I'm just calling it dark PR, but I'm starting to implement some of those practices. So I have case studies. So one of those will be coming out here soon. But basically, kind of like the black hat version of PR. There are some cool tricks, right? That I want to be sharing here with the world soon. So
spicy, exciting. Yeah, very interesting. Could you give us a little glimpse of what might be in that box?
Yeah, I can share one real example. So like if you go to our website right now, you'll see in the awards section, we have an award for our agency being listed as one of the top 10 West Coast SEO agencies with Small Business Magazine, right? Well, what most people don't know is Small Business Magazine is a website like so many others where you can pay for placement, just like you would do with your guest post outreach. So the difference here is I actually paid to have that article created. So
right,
I found a handful of well-mentioned agencies in the West Coast and conveniently put Enleaf as one of those in that listicle. And so once that's created, once the listicle is created, then I create a press release on top of that, send out a newsletter. So yeah, I mean, with a little bit of like ingenuity, you can kind of do double duty, right? So what I'm starting to think about a lot more as far as like link building and link acquisition, which I know you haven't talked a lot about, but is figuring out ways to pair that with PR and branding, right? So why pay to do a link insertion on a third party just by itself when you could turn that into not only a backlink, but also a PR opportunity that you could then create a press release and a story around, yet alone, maybe adding an award on your website, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of part of that. I know I stole this idea from Craig Campbell, but it's not very difficult, for instance, to get your name on IMDb, right? If anyone wants to get a laugh, look for my name in IMDb. You'll see pretty funny credit for that. And so yeah, I just, essentially challenge people to like start thinking outside the box. And that's kind of where I want to pivot some of my discussions around, kind of a little bit more shady or ingenuitive press release type or PR type opportunities.
Yeah, let's say innovative. I like that.
Yeah.
Most of the sort of black hat stuff that actually works and makes some sense is usually just being innovative and clever with your marketing approach. Now there of course is considerations about branding, etc. that I always want to keep in mind. But yeah, no, I love that.
Well, the reality is what I'm finding is most PR is all paid for anyway.
Right.
The reason I went down this journey is I had a company reach out to us and they're like, hey, we'll build your brand. We'll help you get featured on these top name listings. And they were charging like 30 to 50 grand. And I'm like, I don't think I want to pay that, but then I started asking a little bit about the process and they're like, well, you can't just go right to entrepreneur.com, right? You got to warm up your brand, right? So you got to get into the market watches and, these kind of things. And what I learned through that process is, a lot of these companies, Forbes and entrepreneur.com, they have these kind of backdoor memberships where, you pay maybe $1,000 a year to become a member. But if you read between the lines, it's kind of like, you have a better chance of becoming like a publisher. And so when you really peel back the curtain, you realize that most PR it's all pay to play anyway. And so, like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? That's kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so we can actually get Entrepreneur and Forbes link by finding this membership and kind of sneaking our way in.
I mean, with those, you actually have to pay for that membership. But then my understanding is that you become essentially in the club. There's no guarantees. Like they don't just spell it out and say, "Hey, we're gonna offer you the ability to become a contributive writer." But if you read between the lines, it kind of spells it out.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and it's the same in general process, right? A lot of people that get backlinks to a lot of these big verticals, they're just paying someone under the table that it's already an approved writer, right? So, but I like the idea of just creating my own awards, right? So the funny thing is I find websites that used to be, or maybe still have magazines. And for some reason, people think if it's a magazine, even if it's a magazine they've never heard of, they think, oh, wow, that's like really impressive. Like they were featured in this magazine. So I'll spill the beans. Like I have a feature here in Boss magazine, right? So that was just published here this last week. But of course, surprise, I actually paid for that placement in that story, right? And of course, I'm going to run a press release on that and put that on our website. But because it's mentioned as a magazine, and it's relevant to what we do, it sounds really impressive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, most PR is kind of smoke and mirrors anyway. So I'm just playing the game that's been already defined for us.
Right. And for quite a long time as well. And yeah, I'm looking at entrepreneur.com, and they do just actually say on their website, they have the leadership network, and it just said,
that's it. Yeah.
It just says, I mean, it's expensive. I mean, it's $3,000.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Right. It's $3,000 for an annual membership, but it literally says what's included, writing for entrepreneur.com.
Yeah. Yeah. And so literally you can pay to become a contributive writer. So nothing's sacred when it comes to PR. It's all whose hands can you grease? That kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I do want to, so we talked a little bit about tools, and now you're mentioning this really interesting stuff about PR, which you'll be posting more about. So again, everyone check out Adam. Now I want to talk a little bit more about your reporting system too, because that's what we initially sort of engaged talking about his reporting suite, because he's created his own Looker Studio that includes all kinds of very interesting data for reporting to clients. And share about how that came into being.
Yeah, so one of my very first talks I gave, and I think this is how we got connected, was through Mads Singer, because I gave a talk at the first in-person SEO Mastery Summit in Vietnam, and I did that talk on the importance of reporting, and there I shared a lot of the ways that we do reporting, and I've spent the last number of years really trying to master Looker Studio. For those that don't know, formerly was Google Data Studio, which is Google's visualization tool. And I really like the tool for a number of reasons. One, if you're in SEO, you're already kind of in Google's ecosphere, right? So why go outside of that? Number two, it's a free tool. And so it can save you a lot of costs. And three, it's very customizable and integrates well with a lot of platforms, not just Google platforms. And so we've spent a lot of time and effort not only building out baseline templates that we use for our clients, but incorporating that into our reporting processes. And then while we don't openly publicize it, we have helped a number of agencies offset their reporting with these reporting dashboards. We have one agency, for instance, they were paying for a third-party platform. Not only was it limiting what they could do, but it was also getting quite expensive. I think they were, spending about $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and that was just going up every time they signed on a new client. So we were able to basically replace that system with, for them. Essentially, they were able to save what they paid for that handoff and the training, covered the cost of reporting in a month, right? But yeah, it's a really good platform, just because it is very customizable, and it does a really great job of integrating all of those different data sets that you might want to present to a client.
That's what I find so magical, is that, like, in general, you have a lot of you have a lack of reporting in SEO, and really sort of measuring the campaign and sharing that in a visual or at least intuitive way. There's a lot of different data sources. Some people use SEMRush, people use Google Search Console. There's backlinks to consider, new keywords,
right?
All kinds of different areas. And then, of course, Google Analytics, especially if you're in e-com, we have revenue data, and that's directly contributed.
Yep.
So, like, being able to just quickly share data from those places and more, as well as you even have the ability to, with Adam's template, you even have the ability to look at and directly integrate with Google My Business or Google Business Profile.
Yeah.
So that you can actually see, the calls coming in, the leads coming in. You have call rail integration. So there's a lot of really cool aspects of SEO and digital marketing that I think your template and Looker Studio actually does a fantastic job.
Yeah, and that was the challenge that we were originally trying to solve. It's like, as practitioners in the digital marketing space, you have all these different tools, and either you're cutting and pasting screenshots or you're pulling all that data into a spreadsheet. It's just not very efficient, especially as you start to scale. We sit between 35 and 40 clients, and like, to do all of that across 35 plus clients, it just eats up a lot of time. So now we build one dashboard where we can integrate everything we need, right? Like you mentioned, we have Google properties, we incorporate Looker Studio, we have SEMRush. The client doesn't need to concern themselves with all of that data. And if you've been doing this long enough, you have clients that will start poking around in Google Analytics, and they're like, well, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? And, you have to say, well, that KPI is actually not important. It's not relevant, but they don't like hearing that. And so this also, I find, keeps everybody focused on looking at the exact KPIs, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this is what we've predefined at the beginning of the campaign, like KPIs that you're actually interested in. And now we're all on the same page. Because that's the other thing too, is like, not every client has the same KPIs. An e-commerce business is going to have maybe different KPIs than a brick and mortar. And believe it or not, some clients, care more about things other than leads. It's not my cup of tea. And sometimes I try to lead them back to, hey, the leads are kind of the most important thing. But some clients are all about the ego, and they're like, well, I want clicks and views, and so you can customize that report to what it is that everybody, needs to be seeing.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a great way to take care of your clients, understand them, and then keep everyone on track. Another part of it is within the first 3 months, the KPIs might be different than, after that.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of a campaign, oftentimes you're looking mostly at getting new keywords indexed, getting the overall website, getting traffic, clicks, etc. And that's just a good way to keep everyone accountable and aware of sort of what's going on, make sure that things are progressing as they should be. And really just keep everyone on the same page. I think it's a great way to do that.
Well, that was kind of why I spent so much time figuring out the reporting scenario too, is because, SEO, unlike other disciplines in digital marketing, has a much longer maturation period. And, if a client is paying you $1, $2, $3 a month, those first couple months, you have to constantly be proving your value. And if it's not happening initially in the leads because you're still warming things up, good reporting is going to, basically keep your clients at bay and be like, understanding like, oh, wow, work is happening and progress is being made, even if we're not multiplying our revenue or our ROAS or whatever it is, right? And so I find that it gets you through that interim period so that clients stick around long enough for the campaigns to actually succeed.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen on the flip side, I've seen a lot. We've inherited a lot of businesses from clients that had agencies that had just horrible reporting. They're just doing a data dump out of SEMRush or whatever, and the client's like, I don't know what any of this data means, right? So we also pair our reports with what we call a narrative report, which is more of like, high level, like, hey, here's what we're seeing. And so that's a general Google slide deck that is paired with the Data Studio report.
And do you do that monthly?
Every month, yeah.
Very nice.
That's the most manual part of the reporting. But again, that's still, I think, a pretty important part of our process. But most of the raw data is right there in that Data Studio report and all done dynamic.
Yeah. And do you do a lot of meetings with your clients?
I don't do as many anymore. Our clients still do monthly check-in calls. We have some clients that hold us to it, others that don't. And so we put it in their court. I would say the better clients tend to want to jump on a call. And so we certainly encourage it, but we don't force it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely part of our offering. Like, hey, every month you have the opportunity to jump on a 45-minute call with us, and we'll go through what's happening and any questions. So that is a big part of retention. And obviously having good reporting helps guide those conversations. Without it, it can be a total cluster. So
Right. Amazing. Yeah, so you have very cool stuff going on with reporting and in SEO in general. So yeah, it's very, very fascinating. How big is your team growing? I know you said you have some writers, you have some high level staff, right? So what does your organization structure look like?
yeah, so we're like probably roughly 7 core team members. So I have an operations director that oversees kind of day to day, does some client relations, also helps with the reporting. I have a head writer that kind of organizes all of our writing processes. We also have a team overseas that works on a lot of our link building outreach. We have a couple Google AdWords specialists. So yeah, it runs the gamut. But yeah, roughly around 7 key team members, and then some third-party vendors. Oh, I didn't mention our dev team. We have a web development and design team as well.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and I'm sure that those also have their individuals too. So you have this really interesting reporting suite, and I think it is so critical that we have that reporting for clients, and clients need that so that they can, from a business perspective, we're SEOs. We think, we understand all this stuff, but a lot of people don't. And you need that assurance there that, hey, keywords are improving, there's some traffic coming in, and that can frame your calls and really give some assurance. So I think that's really fascinating. And I appreciate you sharing all of that with us today. We'll cut it off because I know you're probably tired. Have given us some really.
This has been great so far. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So
awesome. Yeah, thank you, Adam. I've really enjoyed the call. I think that we've gotten really good information, some secrets that I think people will enjoy, and stuff that could just really help both agency owners and clients, be aware of sort of what's happening and what they should expect in an agency. I think you guys are doing really good work, and I appreciate that because there's a lot of bad SEO agencies. So
unfortunately, that's right.
A lot of bad SEO agencies. So I really do appreciate the fact that you guys are out here doing some good work. And I'm very excited to hear more of your journey and what you keep posting. Thank you for jumping on. Is there any last sort of things you want to share with the audience, such as like where to find you and all that those good details?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, feel free to check out our website. It's enleaf.com. That's ENLEAF.com. You can follow me on social media. I'm on all the platforms. I'm pretty active on Facebook, LinkedIn, a little bit on Twitter and Instagram. So feel free to follow me on any of those channels, and hopefully I'll be able to engage with many of you here soon. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I recommend everyone go check out Adam. He's doing some really cool stuff in SEO and digital marketing. So you would be amiss to not check out what he's doing and learn from him. So yeah, thanks for sharing everything. I'm very excited to keep learning from you. So I appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thanks for the opportunity, Patrick.